G'day folks, welcome to this introduction to the campaign for North Africa, the Desert War 1940 to 1943. This was designed by Richard H. Berg and published by SPI in 1979. It has a kind of infamous reputation. But the very first thing I need to say is I will not be playing this game. This is not going to be a playthrough. This is an introduction to the system. I've long been curious about this. It's one of these games that fascinates many gamers where you have this almost a morbid curiosity about one of the most infamous war games of all time. And as I'm about to head into North Africa 41 by Mark Simic, my curiosity was piqued. And so I began reading the rules and diving into this a little bit deeper just to figure out where that infamy comes from, why it is so infamous. And I really wanted to kind of scratch the surface and see below that reputation, what is this game actually like to play? So that's what this video is about. It's going to be an introduction to the campaign for North Africa. I'm going to try and scratch the surface and share what I've learnt about this game. And hopefully, give you a sense of what this is like to play without actually playing it, based on my very superficial reading of the rules. So as I said, designed by Richard H. Berg in 1979, and my first impressions are that this is very similar. There are many common elements It's building upon knowledge of gameplay and rules and ideas and mechanics at the time. So coming from the sort of string of SPI games in the late 1970s. And I will point out from the start that Atlantic War was published in 1978. This was Joe Barkowski. And there are many kind of similar elements carried to, and I don't know if the extent to which Richard Berg is evolving these concepts or learning or in discussions, but we see these commonalities. And of course, Atlantic War becomes the modern era GOS system. And again, there are many similarities with GOS, particularly revolving around combat and the use of artillery and the sort of stage sequence of play for combat and things like this. So what should I point out first and foremost, and where do I begin? First and foremost, a ton of reading. The rulebook, I don't have a physical copy of this. I've thought about it many times, but copies are on eBay for $2,000. And so it is prohibitively expensive. That said, there are some good Vassal modules. This is the most recent Vassal module. I think it's version 1.0. I think there are a couple of versions 0.79s and so forth. And I've noticed that this is slightly different. The map art is slightly different to what I've seen in the rulebook. So if I can show you, this is the PDF rules that I've been able to download, and there are map scans, color map scans at the end of this rulebook. So if I can find the map with Hellfire, here we go, Bardia. If I zoom in on here, and let's just compare these two regions. So here's Bardia, the actual map art, and here is the Vassal module. And you'll just notice some subtle differences, both in the color and in so this is the road along the coast here, and it does look different. The font looks different as well. So I don't know how somebody has done this, if they've recreated this from scratch, or if some of it looks like this terrain down here. It is different, in fact. Right, so the terrain art. So it looks like somebody has recreated the map somehow. I'm very curious about the background to that. Perhaps clearing it up, making it look a bit nicer. The railroad is in black instead of in blue on the map. But yeah, that's the first thing that struck me, that the map art looked a little different. And the counters have been redone, so they are not original counter scans. They have been, by the looks of it, reproduced from scratch. So kudos to the people responsible for that. And let me just go on to, so here is the Vassal website, so you can have a look. So I'm using CNA mod version 1. So this is what I was looking at earlier, version 0.95, and then there are some scenario files that you can download. With this module, there's the campaign and there's Operation Desert Fox scenario. So you will, if you want to play any of the other scenarios, you will need to download those scenario files from elsewhere. One here in a scenario card, there may be more available online. Contributors Mitch Guthrie and Scottish Horde. So congratulations to those. It really is a very nice, very different looking Vassal module to what I'm accustomed to. All these little buttons up the top here look very different to what I've normally seen in Vassal, but I'm really getting distracted here. I'm here to talk about the actual game itself. Okay, so it is... It is, what is it? Okay, most units you'll see on the map are division, brigade, regiments, battalions. Okay, so if I can look at just the Italian front here, we can see Libyan infantry division. Scrolling over here, we have the Aresca armoured regiment, and in that stack is the 21st tank battalion. Over here, some more battalions, infantry battalion, 54th Indian, and others. So battalions, regiments, divisions primarily. And I'll sort of talk more about that scale in a few moments. There is quite a clear sequence of play. You begin by rolling for initiative, and initiative, so you both players will roll for initiative at the start of the turn. At the start of every turn, you'll roll for initiative, and players will add, these are all my little cheat sheets, points that I'm going to talk about. Players will both roll for initiative, and initiative changes over the course of the game. I thought I did have it up and handy, but apparently not. So yeah, initiative changes over the course of the game depending on the time of year. So you add your initiative based on the time of year to your die roll, and that determines who goes first. Then, what drives the game, so you've got the sequence of play. Did I have that up handy? I don't think I did. You'll follow the sequence of play, but what drives the game, what drives your unit activities are their CPAs. And this is capability point allowance. So rather than having a movement allowance or action, so think of these really as action points. And in effect, because they can move further, the more mobile units like this A13 cruiser has a CPA, what did I say it was? The capability point allowance of 30. And they'll use these points to do everything that the game allows you to do. Attack, retreat, move, everything you can do. What else can you do? I think everything costs CPAs. And you'll use these CPAs to move. Different terrain, of course, may... Actually, there is a table. I did have it up. Let's have a look at the... Where is it? Here we go. Capability point expenditure summary. So these are all the things you can do in the game that cost you those AP. So you've got the A13 unit. Do they want to detach a unit? Costs 1 point. Assign a unit, one or 2 points. Replacements, enter a minefield terrain effects chart, and so on. Do they want to break contact? 2 CPAs or CPs. Do they want to probe 2 CPs? Are they patrolling? 0. Desert Raider patrol is 5. Attempt to poison a water source. 1 CP. Attempt to sweeten a poisoned water source. 5 CP. Fascinating. What else? Some of the important things. Construct a supply dump, a real or a dummy supply dump, railroad, transport troops by air, paradrop, and so forth. They're some of the more unusual ones, but of course attacking. I don't know where I saw, I don't know if attacking's even here, but I thought that costs 3. Oh, here we go. A non-phasing unit can barrage or defend against an assault other than a probe. 3, the phasing unit, barrage and or assault other than probe. 5. So these are some of the main combat aspects. So units will use their CPA, I forgot it already, capability point allowances to spend these points, mainly, you're thinking, to move around the map. So think of this as sort of a movement, action point allowance, mainly movement to move around, but of course you can do all these other things with that CPA as well. Of course, your slower units, your guns, and this is just Commonwealth tank and gun chart. Every different type of unit has their own chart. Where are they all? That's just the allied gun chart. So your units will have what they are. Your formations. You'll have divisions, and then on the look, there's so much to talk about here. On the divisional log, this is just an infantry division log sheet. On your infantry division log sheet, you will log the type of units in that division, and on this log sheet. So you'll have, for example, let's say you've got the first Libyan division. Within that first Libyan division, you may have these maneuver elements, these support elements, various augmentations, combat information, trucks with them, ammunition, fuel, stores, water. I'm really not going to dive into this aspect of it, but the various elements you have, infantry, anti-tank, artillery and so forth, you'll log that, and they, look, I'm already struggling to flick between these sheets, they will have individual characteristics. So you can break them off and they can do certain things. Let's try and find some other units. I was going to try, so here are the actual various counters. It must be further up north, up. German unit allowance, CPA, so headquarters have a large CPA. An infantry battalion, 25 CPA. They have different codes for different allowances. So, you know, an 8 type of infantry unit would only have 10. In fact, most of them only have 10, some of them only have 8 allowances. This might be a mechanised, motorised infantry formation. I'm just having a guess there. I really have not dived into that level of detail. We can see some more types of units. Artillery, anti-tank, Recce battalion has 45. Okay, and this is also, sorry, I should also point out, these charts, these tables, is where you find all the other information about your unit. So this is the Italian unit characteristic chart. So I mentioned the first Libyan division. It's an E-type unit. So you'd need this chart and you'd go Italian infantry battalion, and you try and find E. I don't know why they're not there. I don't know why it starts at N. Why does it start at N? Maybe they're further north. Okay, there's some more Commonwealth. That's a good question. I don't know why there's no E there. Because is that a headquarters? I don't know. Anyway, I'm already a bit lost. But this is where they get their anti-air, their barrage, their anti-armor, vulnerability, armor protection, critically their close assault offense and defense values, and their maximum TOE, where I have no idea what TOE is. I've forgotten already. But they get their TOE value. TOE. I can't remember reading about that, but that's TOE. So that's those charts. You'll need these charts for every unit in the game. So you can imagine just constantly cross-referencing. I've got this division or this type of unit. This is their offensive value, etc., etc. Not printed on the counters. Not printed on the counters. Printed on the charts. The counters themselves are very plain. I don't mean that as an offence, but to say there's not a lot of detail on these counters. Again, mindful of this era, 1979, printing and design capabilities were extremely limited, and this is what they produced to satisfy that desire for detail. Okay, so that's the units. So we've talked about, and the capability point system drives your activities. I've mentioned initiative. Movement is fairly straightforward, using the CPAs. There are various terrain effects. There's a terrain effects chart. But as you can see, a lot of sort of that clear desert terrain. There are phasing and non-phasing actions. So if the Italians move adjacent to the British down here, they can spend their CP's capability points to withdraw in the face of that Libyan Italian attack. So you do have phasing player engagement, which is really interesting for 1979. I'm not sure how broadly those kind of ideas were used, but nice to see phasing player engagement in non-phasing player engagement in the phasing player's turns. They can actually do things to retreat, withdraw in the face of sort of enemy movement. There is stacking points and stacking limits, and it is the rules around this are characteristically complex. What is it? 3 units per hex, or 4 stacking points per hex? No, it varies based on the type of terrain. So every different type of terrain. There's not a lot of different types of terrain, but the different types of terrain have different stacking limits. And there is, of course, the table for that. What would you expect? I don't know where it is. There are so many tables, but it's probably way up the top here somewhere. Again, this is just still some of the many different units and their types and what's in those units. Okay, so different divisions have different unit compositions. I mentioned sort of how you'd lay that out on the planning sheet. Reinforcement schedule is fairly straightforward. Aircraft characteristics, very interesting. Different ranges. Let's just look at aircraft briefly because I won't really talk about that in detail. Different ranges, different air values, maneuver, bomb, fuel, and mission capabilities, what they can actually do, the different types of missions they can perform. So that's the Access exclusive charts. These are the Commonwealth exclusive charts. There are Aussies here as well for Australian viewers. We feature, of course, what was it, the ninth, oh, well, we had the 9th Division was the most, here we go, 18th Australian Brigade, that's a brigade, 9th Australian Division, and the 6th Australian Division, who were withdrawn. So, Australians, I'm going to take a brief moment to talk about the Australians. This is the 2nd Australian Imperial Force, the 1st Australian Imperial Force fought during the First World War. The 6th and the 9th were sent over. The 6th were withdrawn when Japan entered the war to come back and defend Australia. We lost the 8th Division in Singapore, surrendered in the fall of Singapore, and the 6th and the 7th were prioritised for the defence of Australia and Southeast Asia. So these are 2 1st Australian Infantry Battalion, 2 2nd, 2 3rd, and so forth, part of the various brigades. And look, bias speaking, but the 9th Division in particular performed exceedingly well in North Africa. Sorry, side note there. Where am I looking for? I'm looking for the terrains effects charts. So actually, it might be actually within. There we go. Okay, so here we go. This is straight from the original game. CP cost to enter. So you'll pay different costs if you're non-motorised or motorised. That's pretty familiar. Most games, most war games these days have that non-motorised, motorised cost. I have no idea what a breakdown value refers to. But then combat adjustments, stacking limits. So it's not to, mountains of 3 stacking, major cities, you can have 8 units, roads and tracks 5. It's not too complex, but of course it is different based on the type of unit. And this is the terrain. So you've got clear, salt marsh, desert, rock, gravel, rough. As you can see, most of it is clear, a fair bit of rough. You'll be sticking to that clear terrain. Then you've got railroad, unfinished railroads, roads, unfinished roads, things like that. It's going to be a bit confusing using this terrain effects chart with this terrain because I believe this is an unfinished road and this is a road. So the road goes down to Solemn and Hullfire Pass. I don't know how to remove. I tried that doesn't work earlier. Hide all pieces on the map, there we go. So it goes down to Solemn, and then from Hellfire Pass onwards, it's an unfinished road. CP cost summary, there you go, there's a summary of that as well. I didn't need to bring up the rulebook. It's summarised there. Distance charts to summarise rapid movement between key locations. Other charts, there we go. So you wanted the chart, they're all here as well. Initiative ratings, so I see I mentioned how initiative ratings vary. Commonwealth player between turns 1 to 42 have an initiative rating of 3. between 43 and 90, they have 4, and it goes up to 5 as they begin to seize the initiative, basically. Stacking point values, that's the value for actual units. The divisions have a stacking point of 5. This is some of the artillery barrage calculations. So I mentioned it's very similar to the GOS system or Atlantic War, which was published the year before. You add up the barrage points, determine barrage factors, and then launch barrages, barrage results. Combat is complex, follows for a sequence where you've got artillery barrage, you allocate your artillery units, you've got sort of an armour, anti-armour sequence, and then, so that's anti-armour fire, and then you get to close assault, which is the kind of the core of attack. I love the prisoners rules. You capture prisoners, you must guard them. That's brilliant. So this is prisoners captured result, how many prisoners you get from the surrender of a unit. But when you get prisoners, you actually have to guard them. You've got prisoner counters, and you have to allocate units to guard your prisoners. I'll skip through patrol, reconnaissance, morale. You have to track the morale for your units, and that is tracked on your chart. So here again is the charts. Where is morale tracked? I thought it was on this table. Maybe I was, oh, basic morale. Basic morale. Okay, so you will track morale for your units. Training, I don't recall. Attachments, replacements, fairly straightforward. Production, breakdown vehicles, destroy tanks. You repair these things. It's amazing. You've got different nationalities, repair facilities. Engineers, constructing. It's fascinating. There is so much. Here we go. I think this is the actual types of things that your engineers can construct. I'm going to broaden this out. And it's amazing. The breadth of things your engineers can do. They can build fortifications. They can build real minefields, fake minefields. They can build railroads, roads, temporary repair facilities, water pipelines, airfields, airfields or landing strips, flying boat basins, ports, real supply dumps and fake supply dumps. I love that they can do so much, and it enhances your capabilities. It's brilliant. Demolitions, of course. Raid on Rommel. Okay, so Rommel plays a key role. The Desert Fox, and he gives special capabilities to the Axis player. Being a Richard Berg game, he's included this Raid on Rommel table where the long-range desert group can be sent out to try to kill Rommel, and if they roll well, they can kill Rommel. Now, with all this complexity and all this detail, okay, have not played this game, likely will not play this game, but with all this complexity and detail and planning and all this kind of stuff and trying to do manage these operations, if the long-range desert group rolls a 12, they kill Rommel, and the Axis lose all these capabilities. At that point, if that ever happened, if I was the Axis player and that ever happened, I would throw in the game and throw the game in the bin. No, not for $2,000. I'd sell it on eBay. But that is, here we go, 12. The raid succeeds and Rommel is captured. The long-range desert group escapes with the Desert Fox. Richard Berg, that's so nasty. That is so nasty. Just that potential. I know it's a 1 in 36 chance of it happening on a raid, but that after sinking however many dozens of hours into this game, to have that happen to you, oh boy, I'd house roll that, to be frank. I would not let that happen. Lose Rommel just because of a die roll. A low chance die roll, but a die roll nonetheless. Skipping through some of these various tables: pilot arrival, German pilot arrival, squadron scramble, mining harbour by plane table, air recon of land units table is really fascinating. And I could probably skip. Water availability is really interesting. Yeah, a lot of it skimming over in detail. So lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of tables. And if you're playing this in person, with all your infantry log sheets, all those tables and charts, it does make Vassal very attractive. Okay, so let's get back. What else is there? I've mentioned combat. So you go barrage. I mentioned the non-facing player has the option to retreat. There's the anti-armor, combat, then close assault. There are various rules for patrols and reconnaissance, and what they can do and what they can find. I mentioned morale. And throughout all this, you are managing, again, highlighting just one division, the organizational complexities of your units, the actual unit itself, the elements within those units, support, etc. You've got to manage that for every. This is just one infantry division log sheet. That is one infantry division. Okay, that's another. That's a regiment. I don't know how you'd manage that. There's another division there. So, and you know, this is not a. There are not hundreds of divisions. It's not the Eastern Front. This is North Africa. So small number of divisions, but you need to manage that for every division. I can just here see 4 Italian divisions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, you're looking at least 5 there. This is a cleaned up, so Vassal is a cleaned up sort of version. I mentioned that someone seems to have created this, so you don't have the charts printed on the map as you do in the original game. I mentioned breakdown units, being able to break units down, reminiscent of Goss. You have vehicle breakdowns as well. I mentioned the engineers and construction and fascination with that. There are real and fake minefields, long-range desert raiders, prisoners. I've mentioned there's variable weather effects. The initiative player will roll for that. There's of course naval effects as well. You're focusing on the land operation, but you have naval and air rules as well. And in fact, the air rules are a completely separate. Logistics in air is a completely separate rule book. So you've got the land operations rulebook is, here we go, let me bring it over and you can see what I'm looking at here. You're looking at, what page are we on here? 40, where are we here? 44 pages of land operations rules. Although this does include some naval rules as well. And then we get to this PDF that I've got, includes air and logistics. So it's a separate book that you'll get in the physical copy of the game. It includes air, combat, the logistics, game, fuel, ammunition, and I really have not looked at this in detail. Water, trucks, transport, etc. And then the scenarios. Yep. And then the air game. Okay. Oh, sorry, and then the rules start with the air game. At the bottom, okay, so this is one rule book, a second rule book in effect. Summary of important locations. I'm really skimming down through this. Just to get to the end, counter sheets, scan, and then we get to charts and tables common to both players. There's no index to this, so this has been difficult to navigate. And again, fortunately, Vassal has that little other charts, and you can quickly click on the rated Rommel chart. It's a really good design of this Vassal module. Again, praise for the designers here. Other charts, distance charts, so road distance table, things like that, for easy calculation between points. Look, I will. Oh, it's a bit late, but I also want to shout out to Clay Stone, who did some playthroughs and some examples of play of little combat elements from Campaign for North Africa. He did a couple of videos on kind of how this works in practice, how the combat mechanics work in practice. It's well worth checking those out. I was watching those earlier as well, and he sort of goes through how this works in practice. He doesn't go into logistics. Clay, apologies if you've done a logistics video, I've missed it. So I'll do a quick look. He did tank battles, practicing combat, more tank battles, learning combat and CP allowances, planning your attacks, things like that, more combat action. He's got quite a few videos on Campaign for North Africa, highlighting these different aspects. He goes through a turn playthrough. He's actually got a few different full sort of live playthrough videos. So check out Clay Stone. This is his channel here. Does a lot of Goss videos, and if I can scroll down, here are some of those Campaign for North Africa videos. Well worth checking out if you're interested in learning. So this game is fully playable on Vassal. Given the $2,000 price tag on these games, it would seem to be the only sort of option if you're interested. What else can I say? It's a very well designed vassal module. To reiterate, I will not be playing this, but having kind of started looking into it, this is the scary stuff. The need to log things off map is what is really intimidating. And this is only part of it. Okay, so if I'm scrolling up, we've got force supply summary. You've got to track all these dumps, ammunition, fuel stores. It's the logistics aspect. Combat, movement, artillery, none of that is too unusual or foreign, and I imagine most people would be able to learn that fairly easily. It's the logistics aspect of the game that where its complexities lie. Okay, so folks, look, I hope this has been of interest. As I said, it was just designed to be an overview of the campaign for North Africa, to get to the core of gameplay, the combat and how it works, and that CPA, I've already forgotten what the C stands for, capability points, was that it? And stacking and the combat process and how that all works. And hopefully I've shed some light on that. So that aspect is not quite as intimidating as the separate logistics elements of this game. Thank you all for watching, and yeah, take care.